Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most shocking and defining moments of the Russia-Ukraine war, the destruction of the Crimea Bridge, an attack that not only shook Moscow, but also changed the course of the entire conflict. This wasn't just an explosion, it was a message, a symbol of defiance, and a strike that rattled the foundation of Russian confidence. The world watched in disbelief as flames and smoke rose over the Kerch Strait, marking a turning point in one of the most intense modern wars. The Crimea Bridge, also known as the Kerch Bridge, has always been more than just concrete and steel. Built after Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, it was a proud statement from Vladimir Putin, a physical and political link that tied Crimea directly to the Russian mainland. Stretching nearly 12 miles, it was the longest bridge in Europe and one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in Russian history. For Putin, it symbolized victory, control, and permanence. For Ukraine, it was a wound, a reminder of territory taken and freedom stolen. In the early hours of that fateful morning, peace shattered in an instant. Witnesses on both sides of the strait reported hearing a massive explosion that echoed across the water. Within moments, a huge fireball erupted, engulfing the bridge in flames. Videos began flooding social media, a section of the bridge collapsing into the sea, trucks and rail cars burning, and thick black smoke spiraling high into the air. The world woke up to the unimaginable. The bridge that Putin himself had driven across just a few years earlier was now burning. Russia's initial reaction was confusion and panic. State media rushed to label it an accident, blaming a vehicle explosion, perhaps a truck carrying fuel. But as the scale of the damage became clear, it was obvious that this was no random accident. It was a deliberate, calculated attack. The road section had collapsed, and the parallel railway carrying fuel tankers was still burning uncontrollably. The images were devastating, not only to the bridge itself, but to the illusion of Russian invulnerability. The Kremlin called it a terrorist act, pointing fingers directly at Ukraine's intelligence services. Putin described it as an attack on Russian sovereignty and vowed revenge. But for many analysts, this was more than just a military operation, it was psychological warfare. Ukraine had struck at the very symbol of Russian occupation, right where it hurt most. The attack was bold, precise, and deeply symbolic. Strategically, the Crimea Bridge was critical. It served as the main supply route for Russian troops stationed in southern Ukraine. It carried fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements from mainland Russia into occupied Crimea and beyond to the front lines. By crippling that link, Ukraine effectively disrupted Russia's logistical chain. Every destroyed section meant delayed supplies, stranded soldiers, and mounting pressure on the battlefield. This wasn't just a symbolic victory, it was a tactical one with real consequences. For Ukraine, the explosion represented hope. It was proof that even the most fortified and symbolic Russian targets could be reached. It demonstrated precision, intelligence, and courage. While Ukrainian officials didn't officially claim responsibility, their reactions online spoke volumes. A government post on social media simply read, "Sick burn." The message was clear: Ukraine was no longer just defending, it was taking the fight back to the occupier. Across Russia, the reaction was one of disbelief and humiliation. The bridge was seen as untouchable, protected by the latest technology and guarded around the clock. Its destruction was not just a physical failure, but a personal embarrassment for Putin. He had opened it himself in a grand ceremony, driving a truck across it to show strength. Now that image was replaced with smoke, fire, and collapse. Russian citizens, many of whom had supported the war from a distance, began to realize that the conflict could strike deep within their own pride and territory. The explosion triggered an immediate escalation. Within days, Russia unleashed a massive wave of missile strikes across Ukraine, targeting power plants, railways, and civilian areas. Entire cities were plunged into darkness as missiles rained down. It was retaliation, Putin's attempt to reassert control and show the world that Russia could still strike back. But these attacks also revealed a growing desperation. The bridge explosion had exposed a weakness that couldn't be fixed by missiles alone. Internationally, the event drew global attention. News outlets around the world ran the footage non-stop. Analysts called it one of the most important moments of the war, a direct strike on Russia's infrastructure that carried both military and emotional weight. Western leaders praised Ukraine's resilience, while Moscow scrambled to assess the damage. Satellite images confirmed what many feared. A large section of the bridge had collapsed into the water, and repairs would take months, possibly longer. Inside Russia's military command, chaos spread. The question everyone asked was simple: how did this happen? The bridge was supposed to be under constant surveillance, equipped with radar, drones, and anti-sabotage patrols. Yet the attack slipped through every layer of defense. Investigations pointed to a possible truck bomb, but other theories surfaced: drones, underwater divers, even planted explosives. Whatever the method, it was executed flawlessly. The attack also forced Russia to rethink its supply routes. Trains that once carried critical military cargo across the bridge were rerouted through occupied territories in southern Ukraine, where partisan attacks were frequent. Fuel and ammunition deliveries slowed down. The front lines began to feel the impact almost immediately. Soldiers reported shortages, delays, and growing frustration. The loss of the bridge wasn't just symbolic, it was crippling. For Putin, this was perhaps the greatest personal humiliation of his career. The bridge had been his legacy project, proof of his power and vision. Seeing it destroyed while the world watched was more than a tactical defeat. It was an emotional and political blow. It shattered the myth of control he had built around his leadership. The image of Putin as the unshakable strongman began to crack, both abroad and at home. Inside the Kremlin, panic turned to paranoia. Security was tightened across Russia's major cities, and officials ordered new layers of protection for critical infrastructure. Bridges, pipelines, and power stations were suddenly considered potential targets. The sense of invincibility that had surrounded Moscow for decades was fading fast. For Ukraine, the timing of the attack couldn't have been more powerful. It came during a period when morale was high and battlefield victories were growing. The bridge explosion amplified that energy, uniting citizens and soldiers alike under a shared sense of triumph. The attack became a rallying cry, proof that Russia could be hurt, that the occupier could bleed. As the investigation continued, Russia claimed it had identified the vehicle and route used in the attack. Arrests were made, and propaganda outlets aired confessions that few believed were real. But none of that changed the core fact: Ukraine had done the impossible. The bridge, once a symbol of dominance, had become a symbol of vulnerability. In the months that followed, Russia poured resources into repairing the structure. Engineers worked non-stop, and within a few months, partial traffic was restored. But it was clear that things would never be the same. The psychological damage was permanent. The bridge no longer represented strength, it represented loss. Every truck and train that crossed it reminded the world of that fiery morning. Internationally, the destruction of the Crimea Bridge shifted perspectives on the war. Western military analysts called it one of the most strategic attacks since the beginning of the invasion. It showed that Ukraine had not only the will but also the capability to strike targets deep within enemy territory. It changed how both sides approached warfare. Russia became more defensive and Ukraine more confident. Beyond strategy and symbolism, the attack carried a powerful message about resilience. Ukraine's ability to plan and execute such an operation under immense pressure proved its evolution from a struggling nation to a formidable military power. The explosion told the world that Ukraine would not simply survive, it would fight, adapt, and strike back. The destruction also triggered shifts in global diplomacy. nations that had remained neutral began to see the cracks in Russia's power. Sanctions tightened and support for Ukraine grew. The event served as a reminder that no empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to resistance. Even today, the Crimea Bridge stands as a testament to that moment, partially rebuilt but forever scarred. The rebuilt sections carry the memory of that explosion, a reminder that once, even Russia's strongest symbol was brought down. Every reconstruction video broadcast on Russian television is shadowed by the footage of flames and collapse that went viral worldwide. As time moves on, the attack will be remembered not only for its destruction, but for its impact. It marked the point where the war changed direction from defense to counterstrike, from fear to defiance. It exposed vulnerabilities in a superpower and inspired hope in a nation fighting for its freedom. It showed that courage, intelligence, and determination could challenge even the largest of forces. For Putin, the bridge's fall will remain a lasting scar on his political legacy. For Ukraine, it will forever be remembered as a turning point, a moment when the impossible became possible. The bridge that once stood as a symbol of control now stands as proof that strength built on oppression will always crumble. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the events shaping our world. Stay aware, stay informed, and remember, sometimes one bold strike can change the course of history forever.